Yeah, I'm really nervous. I'm just gonna talk about that, especially because John is such a great public speaker. But I'm prepared, so thank you guys all. I want to start out by thanking everyone for taking the time out of their day to be with us and to engage in a discussion about something that is frankly uncomfortable and taboo. It is your bravery and your dedication to your children that is going to create change. Thank you for listening, and thank you for caring. I want to use today as an opportunity to share with all of you who I am and why I believe that the third talk is an essential resource for young people. So let me introduce myself. My name is Hannah Adcock. I'm 19 years old. I've lived in Asheville for 13 years. I'm an Asheville High graduate, go class of 2018, and currently I'm in my gap year. This fall, I'm moving to Wilmington, North Carolina, to start my undergrad degree at UNCW. My life, for the most part, has been simple and kind to me. It would not be fair to speak today without recognizing my privilege and acknowledging that in many situations, women would not be applauded for being or respected for speaking honestly the way that I'm going to. I grew up in an age of technological advancements so great that it has completely changed the way we function as a society. I definitely remember the days of landlines and VHS tapes. I remember having to go to the library to use a computer or a printer. I remember when my parents got their first cell phones with 12 buttons and no camera. I remember creating my first email account after we finally housed a boxy PC in our basement. And I do remember when I got my first phone, my first iPod, my first laptop. The advancement of technology throughout my life has allowed me a multitude of opportunities that the generation before me probably couldn't have ever imagined. But like anything, there are side effects that nobody knew about. Technology has given us overexposure to messages and ideas that are toxic for young brains. I was immune to this for a while, but at a very young age, I picked up on those messages, and 10 plus years later, I am still actively having to challenge them. My childhood was relatively carefree. My two big sisters looked out for me, and my friends provided a comforting community to play and grow. There weren't rules about who I could be or what I had to look like. By third grade, the idea that boys who were me and liked you had been introduced to me, and most of my platonic relationships with boys had been devalued into romantic partnerships in the making. This was obviously very confusing for me, and inevitably, I noticed a distance in my male friendships. Moving into middle school only complicated things, and slowly the situation got worse. As early as 11 years old, my self-esteem began to plummet. I was constantly compared to other girls around me, forced into a competition with standards I could never live up to. The expectations were impossible, and my girlfriends and I found ourselves fighting a battle we could never possibly win. Best case scenario, I was shrugged off. If I wasn't on any boy's radar, which I wasn't, I was ignored. Worst case, I had to endure endless torment. I had to look my male classmates straight in the face while they delivered their hateful message. I'll spare you the vile and cruel language I heard on a daily basis, but I can tell you that that mistreatment came solely because I was losing that competition. I was too ugly, too fat, too flat-chested, or too tall to be considered attractive, and that was enough to justify being bullied. When I hit 14, the rhetoric changed. After almost 4 years of internalizing insults, thinking I would never be enough, and being broken down so violently that I started struggling with severe mental health issues, suddenly I began receiving attention. I got text messages, Snapchats, follows from men who assured me how beautiful I was, and I was faced with a whole new set of expectations. If I wanted to keep my spot in the competition against other women, I needed to be the attractive sexual fantasy that we see every day in magazines, movies, and porn. I need to be down for anything, but not too much, because no one likes a slut. I need to be the perfect mix of sultry but shy, innocent but provocative, submissive but strong. How do you win? How do you possibly make everyone happy? How do you possibly fulfill yourself when you've become nothing but a projection of society's demands? And I think that society is the important distinction there, because I was not just receiving this message from my classmates. I received this from every angle of my life still, But at 14, who did I have to help me? When the pressure is on to meet that expectation, where do you turn to for examples? To put it plainly, sex education failed me. I took 2 sex ed classes in the span of 12 years of public school, and if you would like an insight on what I learned, it was nothing. I was lucky that my parents took the initiative to educate me separately. I remember being 15, having to teach my classmates basic reproductive anatomy, which of course I was happy to do, but if that doesn't reflect the failure of our system, I don't know what does. The little sex that I received was not inviting and only furthered the message being sent to me by media and porn. I was taught that my female organs and sex were strictly for reproduction, that sex was an uncomfortable and painful act, and that personal sexuality was not something to take pleasure in or to be proud of. Sex was for men to enjoy, and for women, we had to take the responsibility to lock up our virginities and to navigate STDs and pregnancy on our own. So sex ed was not reliable. For a long time, it felt like my job as a woman was to be nothing but a pretty face or a nice body for someone to look at. I thought my worth as a human was defined by how attractive I was in comparison to models or actresses or porn stars. I thought platonic relationships with men could not exist, and that if a guy wanted to talk to me, it was purely because I had something to offer sexually. I thought flirting was sending nude pictures of myself or letting men tell me about perverted sexual fantasies. I thought a date was getting picked up and driven to a remote spot to make out or be felt up, sometimes with my consent. I thought sexual abuse and being taken advantage of was a woman's fault. I endured that struggle because I didn't know better. I was objectified and taken advantage of because I didn't have the strength, the knowledge, or the resources to demand better. A lot of my female friends opted out and chose not to allow themselves to be put in a box, which meant that they missed out on adolescent dating altogether. But at this point, that seems like the preferred route. I was never reassured that my purpose on this earth was not just to please men. For a long time, dating and sex were a chore, a social currency to keep myself safe and to keep myself functioning in the patriarchy. And I want to note that my family protected me as best as they could. In a lot of cases, I chose to carry that burden alone. But also, how could I expect them to prepare me for something they didn't know I would have to be prepared for? So now, at 19, I am happy to say that time has healed most of my wounds. I'm not going to lie to you, the messages I internalized when I was 12 and when I was 15, and even yesterday, still follow me wherever I go. I still struggle with self-esteem and mental health issues, but I'm dedicated to taking care of myself. I know I'm beautiful. I'm smart enough to know I'm worthy and to recognize how talented I am. I'm comfortable with who I am and all that I have to offer. For my friends and I, dating hasn't gotten much easier, especially with guys my own age who have been exposed to all of the same messages that I have been. But I'm hopeful and I'm strong in my intent. I'm liberated, and I refuse to let porn culture or the patriarchy take that away from me. I'm not a victim. My story is unique, but my experience is not. It's not always easy to open up and share my perspective. I know people will try to invalidate me or question my integrity or refuse to accept my truth, but my experiences don't need validation. I'm sharing my reality with you today because, like I mentioned earlier, we are living in an era unlike any we've ever seen before. Access to porn and other types of provocative and degrading media is not just easily accessible. It's being forced down our throats. We are bombarded by sexist and derogatory messages without even realizing it. Porn culture is changing the way we view and treat each other, platonically and sexually. There is no amount of exposure that is healthy for a kid. There is no amount of exposure that is educational or exploratory. I know that there are girls out there experiencing what I went through, and my hope is that women will not have to fight this battle on the front lines any longer. Our young people, myself included, deserve a world free of objectification and sexualization from others and from ourselves. Before I met John and was introduced to the third talk, no one else was interested to listen. No one else was addressing the problem. No one else was looking for change. I am so proud and honored to be part of this movement. This conversation would not be possible without the efforts of the third talk or your bravery to participate. So I will leave you with my call to action. Talk to your loved ones. Take time to listen to older generations about what they've experienced and younger generations about what they're currently experiencing. Take time to talk to your kids, your family members, your friends about what is happening. Challenge outdated and toxic beliefs and encourage people to think about what they're being exposed to. Praise kindness and understanding. Support people and programs who are working hard to change the narrative and change society for our kids. I sincerely believe that this, right here, is how we change the world. Thank you.